Welcome to Audio Gyan with Kedar Nimkar, a podcast that documents insightful conversations with Indian designers, artists, musicians, writers, thinkers and creatives of all types. Catch us on iTunes or visit audiogyan.com for more Gyan sessions. Here's your host Kedar Nimkar.
Today I have Deepa Punjani with us on Audio Gyan. She's an editor and a content writer for a well-known website Mumbai Theatre Guide, which has been active for past 2 decades. She has taken countless interviews of known and unknown gems of India and people of the world of theatre, and today I'm going to know her process and more about Mumbai Theatre Guide. So thank you, Deepa, for giving us your time, and it's a real pleasure to have you on Audio Gyan.
Thank you, Kedar.
Yeah. There are 2 parts to this conversation. One is general my curiosity about knowing your process of how do you interview, because you have been doing that for quite some time now. And the second part is mainly Ramu Ramanathan helped me with coming up with few questions because I'm not really a domain expert in theatre. So yeah, the first thing which I want to ask you is since this could be insightful and helpful for those especially in the podcasting community, which is just booming up in India. So asking questions itself is also an art form, right?
Of course,
so I want to know what is your process of taking interview? Do you have an objective in mind while you are interviewing people from theatre, and what's the process like?
Well, in fact, I take inspiration from people like you, who using, the resources of the web, like the podcast, to conduct interviews. Of course, at Mumbai Theatre Guide, we do more than interviews. So interviews is just one aspect of what we do. We are a niche theatre website with a number of sections, ranging from previews to reviews, news, information about theatre groups, auditoriums, and so forth. Specifically about my process of, conducting an interview, for me, it's just not enough to be asking obvious questions. So I do try to make it a point to, of course, know the person whom I'm interviewing. In some cases, I do know the person, and it becomes easy. But there are instances where I don't know the person, and then I may just have seen, some work of theirs, or may have not seen that work at all, and I'm still to, do that interview. Then I make it a point to read up as much as I can, to find out as much as I can about the person. If, they're associated with a theatre group or a company, I try to find out that. I try to find out about the people they may have worked with. And then to also, push things. One would start off by maybe just warming the scene by asking about who the person is, in case I don't know the person. But then the idea is also to go deeper, to prod, to when it comes to, let's say, this would work better if I would give you an example. So if I'm interviewing a theatre director, then if I've seen the work, then I can, talk about, their form, their style. But if I haven't, then I ask them questions about that. Okay. So the idea is to also, and then it just doesn't stop at, asking about form and style, but it's also about, who has inspired them, what background have they come from, what training they have had. And where do they see themselves going ahead?
So, but does this mean that when you know the person, it's better to take out more and more insights? But the trade-off is,
of course, there's no doubt, you know a person, you especially if you've seen the person's work over a period of time, you're exposed to a body of work, then definitely in that sense you have more insight.
No, but what I want to point out is then what happens when, say if you have followed a particular director's work,
right,
and you already know the preface, you already know the background of the person, and so you're documenting just something which is your curiosity, or probably what the people are looking for. But what happens to so you start off from that note which already establishes that people might be knowing his background.
Well,
his or her background.
it's always possible that, things that, are asked in an interview, someone else may know about those things. And as I said, one also warms the scene, right? In terms of asking familiar questions, but then going ahead.
Correct.
It's also about asking, in theatre they say that, as in, film or let's say that there are that many stories out there, right? Or that many plots out there. But it's not about that. It's about how you say your story or how you want to, put forth the same story in a different way. Take myths, for example. So many people have interpreted the Mahabharata.
Correct.
Right? I mean, this is a common example I'm giving. And yet, what makes a certain production interesting is that person's interpretation of that text or that character. And then you want to ask the director, again, to, it could be the set designer, it could be the light designer. Costumes may be done very differently. A certain actor might have approached the text in a particular way or the character in a particular way. So then you are interested in asking about that interpretation. And then I think you slowly get into the process of things. And that is what I think makes then that interview different. But it's not always the case. I mean, sometimes you might find, it's really simple and straightforward as well.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then what's the role of the editor in this? I mean, because do you have an objective while publishing a particular article, interview, or a story?
Of course, all the time. This is something that I've learned on the job. So I can't say that I edit in the same way that I used to edit 10 years ago. I have also learned, I have also grown. And in my editing, the one thing I've realized is reviews are, of course, different because reviews are a point of view and they're very subjective. And we do encourage reviews not only to be informed, but again, to look at different aspects of the production and to be critical. In an let's say critique more than being critical so much. But when it comes to editing, I don't change people's views. I don't like doing that. That is not my job as an editor, especially when it comes to review writing. As I said, it's subjective. But what I do tend to focus on, not just editing reviews, but any other content, is that language is very, very important. So it has to be precise. It has to be concise. The semantics have to read correctly. And really, I think for me, what is more important is clarity. And I encourage...
Clarity in the mind of the writer.
Clarity in the mind of the writer, of course, so that just doesn't sort of, come across in the language that is employed, but also the thought process of that writer. It should come across clearly. And I think that's the job of the editor. Sometimes, I have very good writers and they may not have the language. And for me, that is actually okay.
Okay.
Because they have the thought, right? And then in that sense, my role as an editor, of course, is to, make sure that that thought comes across well. And it's, it's condensed in the right manner.
Cool. Now, I would like to tell the listeners also that this section is almost entirely unscripted, and I want to just deep dive into reviews section because that just crossed my mind right now. I don't know whether I'm going too philosophical in this this particular piece. Is that it's very tough to write reviews for plays, right? Because it's just one instance of one play which you have seen. It has number of shows, it happens multiple times, sometimes it's off. So how do you construct a review also, because it's very tricky to just comment or critique on a particular show as opposed to the entire sequence of shows which happen over time, and the play also grows eventually.
Okay, so there are a couple of things here. I don't think that writing reviews for theatre is necessarily more difficult than reviewing a book or a poem, for instance.
Okay.
Or a novel. okay, what are reviews really, right? Let's just dwell into that a bit. Everybody, when they go and watch a play, they're part of that audience for that show, right? And you come out having your opinions and your observations,
certain judgment about
even judgments, right? But what does a reviewer do, or what does a critic do? A critic or a reviewer tries to also make sense of what he or she has seen and put that across to their reader.
Okay.
Right? So it is crystallizing your thoughts more fully when you're writing. Writing enables you to do that automatically. Yeah. When you sit down to write, it automatically gives, I think, your thoughts better form. And I think if you're careful enough, you will choose your words carefully. Right? And then, of course, you'd go on to say what you thought about the play and so on. Theatre is about an experience at a particular moment in time.
Correct.
Right? So you're right that experience would vary from show to show. And, there could be a good show, there could be an okay show, there could be a bad show. And for reasons that have nothing actually to do with the play itself. You may have a great play, but, on that day when you're having a show, a number of things could go wrong, which are basically not in your control.
Correct.
So I think a sensitive reviewer, let's say, happens to see a good play on a day when it is not so great, for the team, for the production team. Then that reviewer would realize that the play is good and perhaps would go and watch the play again.
Oh, okay.
Right? So you got to be sensitive to those aspects. But at the same time, you might see a perfectly all right show. Yeah. And, the play may not work for you, or, for any number of reasons. And you say what you have to say.
So generally...
it's about being sensitive. And what really also happens, it's also about being sensitive to, let's say, a thing like... or let's say an aspect like pace. Pacing is very important in theatre.
Okay.
At what pace?
At pace,
is the play happening? Or let's say more particularly, the show is taking place at a particular pace. And you might not have a very good pace on that day, though you have a great play again. So again, a reviewer critic is sensitive to that. And that's where you are able to, I think it also comes out of experience over time.
Yeah.
And then again with reviews, I think reviewers grow. They don't stay constant. Because if you're staying constant, then you should be very worried as a reviewer. Just like what I much said about being an editor, that I've grown on the job. I can say the same thing about being a reviewer or a critic. That I don't write the way I used to write 10 years ago. And I think that growth is important. There's nothing like being stagnant or saying, I know it. You never know. You always learn.
Correct. And there's no template also.
Yes, there shouldn't be, Now, for instance, I've had a very, very good experience recently engaging with participants who are as young as, 12 and 13 years old.
Wow.
And they have participated in a review writing competition that has been organized by the Pomegranate Workshop. In fact, the play that the Pomegranate Workshop has produced has young participants. The youngest, I think, is 10 or 11, and the oldest is 16 or 17. So these school students, of Bombay Scottish, Don Bosco, and the Nahar School at Powai, they saw this play, and they've written reviews. And I'm looking forward to reading those reviews.
Beautiful. So moving on to the questions which Ramu sir helped me with, and also slightly covering the other aspect of Mumbai Theatre Guide. So can you tell us, like you have been helm of the Mumbai Theatre Guide for past 2 decades now. So
Well, not 2 decades really, Kedar. I have been with Mumbai Theatre Guide for 14 years now.
14 years.
So
Okay,
this would be, my 15th year, so to speak.
Okay.
But yes, my theatre experience goes over 2 decades. I started doing theatre much earlier. I joined Mumbai Theatre Guide, I think somewhere in 2004.
Okay.
Late
Okay.
2004.
Okay. So what are the trends that you have seen in the last 20 years?
There are, I wouldn't speak about trends in so much as let me talk about what I think have been crucial changes and even developments. And I would go back to my own experience in that sense when I started doing theatre, which was in college in my last year. It was 1996. So you're already in the mid-90s. And I believe that theatre in this country underwent a significant change
Okay.
post the 90s. Just like India changed.
Correct.
Right?
This I recollect same statement was done by Atul Pethe.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And I think one genre of theatre that has definitely been affected, by this change, post-liberalization, is street theatre.
Street theatre.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because immediately in this period, you saw a dilution of the workers' movements, of the trade union,
Correct.
right? And I don't think street theatre from there on has really been able to grapple with this new environment.
Okay, sorry for asking a naive question, but street theatre, what's the definition like?
So, well, when you talk about street theatre, you're talking about, many terms would come in, like resistance theatre, protest theatre, theatre of activism,
Okay.
basically socially relevant theatre, even political theatre, right?
Okay.
And one of the most prominent street theatre groups in the country is Janam, the Jananatya Manch, which is a Delhi-based group.
Okay.
And even IPTA's done street theatre. Well, so in that sense, you could also extend, this not being able to, deal with the changes in an effective way, or let's say, to find yourself out of debt or even dated, has something that has even affected Hindi theatre. You look at an organization like IPTA, which is a pre-independence organization, right?
Correct. Yeah.
And the whole idea about IPTA was, to take theatre to the masses, to speak about, social issues, political issues. And you see all that has changed, once we liberalized. And I don't think we've been able to find a way to, address these situations.
Okay.
Not to say that protest theatre does not exist, street theatre does not exist. I know of some wonderful protest theatre groups, people who are activists in, what they seek to do, choose to do when it comes to, social problems of caste, especially. They're there, those people are there. But it's all very fragmented. Yeah? So that's one problem. And it's not that there are no problems. In fact, the problems have only sharpened. Take inequality, for instance. You've never seen so much inequality in this country as we are seeing it today. Yeah? People talk about the failure of the left. And many of these progressive theatre groups, street theatre companies, have, or let's say are associated with that ideology. Yeah, but I'm talking about the failure of the left. You're talking about the failure of the electoral left.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
And there's There's a lot there. So one can't really even, look at it in a microcosm. Yeah. You have various Ambedkarite movements. Yeah. But how do you all bring this together? And I think before the 90s, it was clearer to theatre groups who were involved in this kind of theatre. But I think they've somewhere lost the plot, and they need to be thinking, in a more focused manner.
So you're saying, if I'm not misunderstood, like after 90s, the subtext has diluted?
No, there's no question of any subtext or any dilution there. As I said, I think the plot has been lost, right?
Okay,
So and that the dilution has happened in the union movement, the workers' movement. Yeah, that's where the dilution has happened. But have these street theatre groups, or have organizations like IPTA been able to reinvent themselves? I think not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's one aspect to it. I mean, I'm sure other people will have other views, but I do feel, and and perhaps at the risk of sounding very bold, that you when you start acting in a vacuum, or you harp on issues which are no longer relevant, and obviously that is going to translate into a production, then all that you're left with is a sense of it's done, dusted,
Past.
dated, and what now? Where do you go from here now? Yeah. So that's one thing, one big thing, I think. And that, I think, has also affected, I think, more in terms of, let's say a divide between urban and rural realities. Which is a completely different thing. But there's a big disconnect between people who do theatre in cities like Bombay and in Delhi than what's going out, in other places, also in other regions in the country.
Correct.
And let me tell you, there is a great diversity there, Kedar. Sheer diversity in terms of language, in terms of culture, in terms of, the different kinds of theatre that happen. So how do you deal with that? So that's the other thing. The other thing that I've noticed is there are lots of new theatre spaces in the city.
Tamasha type.
Not tamasha type. You're looking at pocket spaces of theatre.
Okay.
Oh, are you referring to the Tamasha studio?
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I was thinking about Tamasha.
Okay, as a form.
As a form, the folk theatre form. Yes, of course. So there's Tamasha studio. There's the Cuckoo Club. One of my favorite spaces in the city is the Black Box at the G5A. And where I think they also have made it a point to have a vision about curation. And a lot of these spaces, including Tamasha, they are like little art centers. They do more than theatre. There are also little laboratories where work gets created. And, where rehearsals can take place without, bothering about or, facing the headache of where you might rehearse. Because space is at a premium in the city.
And this trend is also in Delhi?
Yeah, in Delhi, I've heard about a few spaces. And of course, now with outposts like Gurgaon and so forth, they've developed their own little spaces there. But in Bombay, I see many, many alternative spaces, if you might call them, where the idea is also to try and bring in the people in that community, in that neighborhood. I don't know if Tamasha has been successful in doing that and drawing audiences from in and around Warsaw. One of the things I would be very happy about if, these spaces would succeed in, involving the local people.
Yeah, I think it's also in Pune because I spoke to Nipun also some time back, and there are also these small pockets happening now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one has always had some form of drawing room theatre, or supper theatre. So that's not really new. But these new spaces, and of course, not all spaces are, designed as they should be, or, as equipped as they should be. So that's something I think the people who run these spaces, the groups who perform there, need to give more thought to. As I said, G5A is an excellent example, but that necessarily cannot be said of all the new spaces in the city. And then there are limitations of, various kinds. We've tied up with various new spaces, little spaces.
So yeah, these are the two things. Anything else?
Well, the third thing I can also think about is, young contemporary women theatre directors and actresses, creators. I remember when I was doing my MPhil, the names that I was exposed to at that time were all the kind of big names from the NSD. Anuradha Kapoor, Neelam Mansingh Chaudhary, Maya Krishna Rao, and I personally looked at the work of Shushma Deshpande and Jyoti Subhash. But what I'm finding now is that there is a new generation of young women who are doing interesting work. Some of them are Gurleen Judge. There is Sheena Khalid. There's Pooja. Pooja and Sheena, they work together with Patchworks Ensemble. There's Deepika Arvind from Bangalore. There's, in terms of contemporary dance, there's Preeti Athreya from Chennai. And I hope that, they are able to, do more work because their work does seem to show some promise. And the other thing that I've also noticed is a greater sensitivity towards the LGBTQ community. So you have various plays that, talk about the issues faced by the LGBTQ community, about transgenders and so on.
Interesting. Cool. Again, slightly changing tracks. You spoke about certain trends, but what is happening to the theaters itself, the spaces itself? Like, for example, what's so unique or what's so different about, say, a Shivaji Mandir as opposed to Bhaidas or NCPA versus some other place? So can you share some insights on that? Like, what's your experience of what kind of plays are happening here and how has these spaces also evolved?
The history of theatre in Mumbai, in some senses, has been tied to its people. Now, there are 4 language theatres in Bombay that are mainstream theatres.
Correct.
And increasingly, I've come to think this is such a unique situation.
Yeah.
Not only in India, but probably in the world. There's one city where you have theatre happening at any given time in at least 4 languages. Yeah. And these are Hindi, Marathi, Gujarati, and English. And of course, then theatre happens in, other regional languages such as Sindhi, Konkani, Tamil, Kannada.
Urdu also for that.
Urdu as well. When we speak of our Hindi theatre, we're really talking about Hindustani theatre, right? Or Urdu theatre. We're not talking about the Sanskritized Hindi.
Correct.
So, Shivaji Mandir has been a bastion for Marathi theatre in the city. Like a Bhaidas is associated with Gujarati theatre or Tejpal in South Bombay. So, what you might say is that these theatres are determined in many ways, by their audience. So, you'll have Marathi theatre people frequenting Shivaji Mandir or Dinanath in Vilepale. Gujarati theatre people, flocking to Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan. Bhaidas, Tejpal, and so on.
Hmm.
Yeah. And Gujarati plays, commercial plays or professional plays, take place in those theatres, while there are theatres just dedicated to Marathi theatre. Hindi theatre and English theatre in that sense is more fluid. But you'll not see an English play happening in Shivaji Mandir.
Shivaji Mandir, yeah.
Yeah. Or a Hindi play for that matter. You might see a Hindi or an English play at Mysore Auditorium at King's Circle. It's possible. Yeah. So it's a unique situation which has existed in the country for many, many years, and it continues to exist. And it's a special situation. And by the way, all these theatres, the main theatres, language theatres, are located near railway stations. So it becomes very easy for the people. Of course, I don't think that's necessarily the concern now, because,
but when it was designed at that time.
It was designed at that time. The idea was that, there should be a station close by.
Wow, brilliant insight.
I don't know if it's an insight. And this is also something that, I have only learned. I can't say it's my insight at all. Yeah. But I would like to go back briefly to the previous question in terms of, as I said, not trends, but what I've been noticing. One of the other things that I've noticed is also for theatre makers to engage with, other forms. Yeah.
Like poetry and...
Yes. I mean, poetry's always been part of performance. But let's say with video installation, for instance. Yeah. Or in some way work, with an artist. Yeah. So you see these collaborations that also happen. They don't frequently happen, but they happen.
But this is like a more contemporary thing, right?
You could just simply call it contemporary performance, or just say performance stroke theatre. It doesn't matter. But you see this happening, and I wish it would happen more. It doesn't happen often, and not everything that is done in this collaborative way turns out to be something that stays on with you. But what's important, I think, is the effort, and you would want theatre people to engage with the other domains of art and literature and even science, because theatre is one form that brings so many things together. It brings so many people as well together. It's a composite discipline. Yeah. And I don't think any single one person can take credit for, a theatre show. I think that's what also makes it special.
Correct. Yeah, it's very tough to crystallize in few words also what theatre is as a medium itself, right?
Yes, and as I said, there are all kinds of plays. There's no just one kind of play.
Correct.
It would be nice for young people to be more exposed, to what's happening first of all around the country.
Correct.
Some young people do that, like Gurleen Judge. She does that. She's aware about. In terms of what's happening, let's say, when she did the play The Hunger Artist, people can have different views about the performance, but what struck me is that, she took the effort to look at what is happening to the cotton farmers in the Marathwada and the Vidarbha regions in Maharashtra. And it's a bad situation. Yeah.
Cool. So Deepa, you mentioned about working about the four languages in which theatre happens. So that's a nice segue, because you have been an actor at a Gujarati commercial stage as well.
Yes,
so I wanted
many years ago.
So just can you quickly highlight upon what's the kind of playwrights Gujarati has produced, or is it changing right now? What's the trend like?
The good Gujarati theatre playwrights that
Because as per my understanding, at least, I've seen a lot of adaptations and translation work which happens.
Yes,
these days,
on the commercial stage, yes. But there have been good Gujarati theatre playwrights, and Naushal Mehta, Bhupen Khakkar wrote a play, The Artist. Wonderful play. Manilal Mojilal. Ramu has written a play in Gujarati that was translated. Soumya Joshi, I think you mentioned him, when you wrote to me about Gujarati theatre. I liked Soumya's early work when he was not known. Now there is Sneha Desai, who's become popular on the commercial stage. But I'm very hard pressed now to think of good writers for the Gujarati stage, and I think the Gujarati stage suffers from this problem. They keep talking about, just as Marathi theatre talks about, a dwindling audience, about a greying audience. And you'd find this kind of thing repeated, in other places in the world as well, in different contexts, of course. But here I feel that, if our theatre makers would have to engage, new and young audiences, it's absolutely possible to do that. But then it's also about, the content. And I'm afraid that content is lacking. But there have been, and Madurai, good writer. But I'm talking about people, of an earlier generation. I've come across some good directors, but not writers. I'm talking about contemporary Gujarati theatre.
No, these names are like slightly unfamiliar for me. But just to understand the background, are they with Dubey and Tendulkar times, or they are much earlier?
No,
or
so
after?
Naushal, of course, knew Satyadev Dubey, and but Madurai, I believe, settled in the US. So Girish Desai, he was known popularly as Girish Bhau, at Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan. He used to helm the Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan. Now it's Kamlesh Mota. He encouraged, some good work in Gujarati theatre as an actor, as a director, and also in having a kind of vision for Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan. But writers, as I said, I can think of these names: Madurai, Naushal, Bhupen, but they're all past. I'm looking ahead, hoping that there might be, I don't know, a Gujarati writer that would spring up enough to hold my attention.
Cool. You are also head of the Indian Critics Association.
Not a head, more of a representative of this is the Indian national section of the International Association of Theatre Critics.
Okay.
So the International Association of Theatre Critics is a world body, and it draws critics from more than 50 countries from around the world. And a country which has more than 10 members can form a section. Okay. So India is a section. Okay. We were able to form a section because we are more than 10. And it's a very, very old body, the IATC. It was found sometime in the mid-50s. And it's doing, I think, good work, where the domain of theatre criticism is concerned. Because again, it's such a small, specialized field, right?
Correct.
So, the fact that there is an organization that recognizes theatre criticism, reviewing as a discipline and as something that they'd like to encourage and, have more young people, join in. I think that is very good. Yes. Yeah.
So, and when do you think Indian stage have a formidable critic like Namwar Singh, who created?
I recall that question because you wrote to me about it. I know little about Namwar Singh, except that, he's very well known and he's known as a progressive literary critic. And, that's where I would like to also draw your attention and distinction between literary criticism and theatre criticism stroke reviewing.
Okay.
So while theatre criticism can be very much part of literary criticism, when you talk about plays that are made into the literary canon, so to speak, and there have been academics who have written about these plays. When I talk about having made their way into the literary canon, you would refer to plays by Tendulkar, for example, or Girish Karnad. And then academics would study those plays, write about those plays. But theatre reviewing is a very different exercise. Because theatre reviewing has more to do with performance, live performance. And it has to do with engaging with the discipline on a regular basis. You might be writing for a newspaper, or in my case, I write for a website, where we are continuously watching, different kinds of plays and, attending different shows. And then, we write about those plays or those shows. And when we write, we engage with it in a different way than, let's say an academic critic might for, let's say, a drama journal. So there are overlaps, no doubt. But I think both of them have a very, very different and a separate function to perform. The way I like to see my reviewing is it has to be about the performance. It has to be about the show that I've watched as well. But it also needs to have the rigor of, let's say, an academic critic in terms of, looking at aspects very, very closely and not just superficially. But then with academic critics, then there's another fallout, is that they write about plays, but they may have never seen a performance of the play. And that becomes tricky as well. So I think both exist in a very separate domain. And then again, you're talking about a country like India, Kedar, where you're talking about so many languages, right? You will have critics writing in their regional language, let's say Marathi, for example, or people like me who write in English, but I could well be writing about a Gujarati play or a Hindi play or even a Marathi play. Because I do happen to, understand these languages fairly. There are critics who may not understand, let's say, Hindi or Marathi. And they may be only comfortable watching English plays. So it all depends on who you are, where you come from, and, what languages you have.
Correct. Just moving on to the same, the next question, but on the same topic, which is actually my second last question. So your reviews of plays by theatre makers like Rehaan Engineer or Deepam Shivaram have been praised a lot. So what sets that review apart from the rest of them, or what have you learned while reviewing that particular play as well?
Well, I think you find they are full of praise because they are positive reviews. Well, it is very obvious that I have liked that work. Yeah. Now, it could well be that I might see another play of Deepam's, for instance, and may not necessarily appreciate that work in the same way I may have appreciated his earlier play. It could happen with Rehaan Engineer as well. Yeah. So again, it's about, what play it is, that particular production at that time. And, let's take Rehaan's example. I have liked his work because I think what he does is he tends to, first of all, be very, very professional. I might sound, it might sound a little banal, if I'm talking about professionalism. But let me tell you, that's at a premium, where our theatre is concerned.
Correct.
Just being professional enough. Now, Rehaan gets that very right. Yeah. You want to see things happening in the right way. Now, of course, I'm not going to go into that discussion of what is right or wrong, but I'm just saying in a way where, you appreciate what's happening. Yeah. And it has a reason. It has a purpose. It's tastefully done. The plays he chooses are good plays. Like the last play I saw of his was Naomi Wallace's, trying to recall the name. It'll come to me. But a very, very good production. Why? Also because the play is very good. So you have a very, very good text at your disposal. And then you ensure that you have, the right actors. You take time to work with those actors. Some of these actors are, very good anyway. But the other thing that you see in a play that has been directed well is that the director has made an effort to also push the actor. And you can see that in performance. So not necessarily that only good actors, are actors who, are different, in one play than the other. They can take on different parts. But it's also the director's task and role to be able to push those actors towards that character, to engage with that character more fully.
Correct.
Yeah. So this play that I'm referring to, the title beats me, but it's set in a time of the, the big plague in London in the 1660s.
Okay.
Yeah. And you have a story, about unequals who are all, forced to be together in one household.
Wow.
Yeah. And there are various themes there. You're looking at gender, you're looking at class, you're also looking at religion.
Maybe orientation also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when the thing is, you have a good play, and then it's such a poetic piece as well.
Interesting.
So it's not about just okay, about always saying that this director's work is good. This director's work is good for A, B, C, D, E reasons. And then there's a certain, as I said, a consistency that develops. Not jadedness, but you know that a certain director is used to working in a certain way, and you appreciate that. But who knows? The next time around, it may all just fall, and may not engage or provoke you in the same manner.
I think right now, at least what I can understand or comprehend is like there are multiple layers at which you have to digest certain things to probably understand what the director or what the play is trying to communicate.
Yes, and also where you are coming from, right, as a reviewer. Why are reviews subjective? Anybody who says a review is objective does not know.
Correct.
Reviews can never be objective.
Yeah.
The only thing you can be objective is about, getting, your language right, or making sure that, your thoughts come across clearly, or you have a structure to your review, that is readable. But that's about it. Everything.
Reports could be objective because it's like what box office or what numbers, financials. Yeah, those are like,
Yes, naturally.
Yeah.
But otherwise, any appreciation of any art form, theatre or otherwise, is going to be a very subjective experience.
Correct.
And subjectivity also, in terms of who you are and where you come from, what you've been exposed to.
Correct. Cool. All right. One last question. Since you've explored so many things in quite some time, so what would be the top 5? I know it's a cliche question, but yeah, like top 5 evergreen.
We never give ratings to the plays.
No.
that
Okay.
we,
So say like
we
no.
we review or we write about. It's one thing I've deliberately,
no, it's not from a like Mumbai Theatre guide
I
perspective.
understand.
But
I know.
yeah,
It's this is never an easy question. I mean, I try to grapple with that question when it's the year end, and to just look back and think what's happened in a particular year. But so is it going to be about which are the top 5 plays? Is that your question?
Yeah, not top 5, but I would say must 5 watch plays, or 5 plays which have lasted or like been test of time. This is a difficult question for this interview, because I really have to think very hard. Okay. And all those plays may not necessarily have been plays that I may have seen in Bombay or in India. Yeah. I've seen some good work abroad as well. No, it's a tough question. One, yeah. But so again, I'll speak about The Hunger Artist, because that's something I saw last year towards the end of the year, and which in fact I wrote about in our closing newsletter for 2018. That this would be, to use the cliche, quote unquote, top 3 plays. And just very recently I saw a very, very nice production, and again in terms of the content as well as the form, a production from Wales by In Vertigo Theatre Company, and it's called My Body Welsh, which is essentially talking about identity and how identities are constructed. It could be a mix of myth, politics, and what you might call, a political national construction. Because Wales, I think occupies a very, very unique position, just like Northern Ireland or Scotland, when we talk about Great Britain. Interesting. All right. I think obviously there are a lot of more things to be questioned, answered, discussed, debated, and it's a never-ending thing. But on this note, I think we'll conclude this section at least. And
of course,
thank you for giving your time. And it
not at all.
It was really a pleasure talking to you, and a lot of food for thought for my personal.
I hope so. I hope I've been able to crystallize my own thoughts in this interview. Yeah, thank you, Kedar.
One more thing is just a plug of Mumbai Theatre Guide. Like if people want to know, they have to visit.
Yes,
Mumbai Theatre.
and I should certainly plug it because it really, I mean, not just to say because I have been working for it or have been editing it for all these years, but I can't think of any other website in India that is such a theatre niche website and which provides regular information and content about theatre, especially in Mumbai. But, we're just not restricted in that way to Mumbai. We've spoken to people from outside Mumbai. We've done interviews with them. We've carried feature articles about theatre from outside Mumbai as well. So while the focus, of course, is Mumbai, we've never limited ourselves to it. And we have a weekly newsletter that goes out free. You can subscribe to it for free. We have over 70,000 subscribers now, I'm told. And we have a Facebook page with over 90,000 followers.
Wow.
And I know that we have slowly but surely established ourselves in the theatre scene in Mumbai and in the country. Yeah.
So all the best for that as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do check out MumbaiTheatreGuide.com.
Please do. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
And that's it from today's Gyan session. Catch us on iTunes, Saavn, Stitcher or any podcasting app you use. Do rate us on iTunes and follow us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. Stay tuned for more Gyan on audiogyan.com. Till then, bye.